Welcome back. So we've just had the academic papers, and now we're kind of shifting gears slightly, and now thinking about practice and the experiences. And I would like to welcome Lloyd, Vice Chair of the ISSB, to host our panel on this.
Thank you very much. And why don't we all come up? I think all the panelists come up and let's get our conversation underway, if you don't mind.
What do you want?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, so the topic of our panel this afternoon is looking at implementation of our wonderful new ISSB standards, hearing what the first experience is out there in the market. And I think we're really very fortunate today to have the lineup of panelists that we have that give us four really different and interesting perspectives here. So starting from my friend to my right here, Gülşah Günay, who's from the National Standards Center in Türkiye, and she heads up the Sustainability Standards Department, which of course last December announced the intention to adopt the ISSB standards from this year. So really one of the very first jurisdictions in the world. And so you will be able to bring the real world experience of what it's like to introduce these standards into a jurisdiction. Complemented by Nadja Picard, who's a partner here in Frankfurt at PwC, where she looks after global sustainability reporting. So Nadja is going to bring to us her experience working with clients to enhance the reporting for sustainability and what they're telling her as they look at the ISSB standards. So welcome, Nadja. And moving on to Adam, who perhaps of everybody is the most Adam Pradela from DHL, where he is, I have to get your title right, it's not written down here. You head up the sustainability implementation at DHL. And I know that you are deeply engaged in the implementation of the sustainability reporting, both under ESRS, also looking at the ISSB, but also talking to business about implementing the real life application of sustainability into processes as well. And Adam's also got a very special place in our infrastructure because he's a member of our transition implementation group, so is engaged in the conversations that others are having as well with the implementation of our ISSB standards. So let's welcome Adam.
Thank you.
And then, very fitting, given that we're here in a university, to have an academic as well on our panel today. So Loriana Pelizzon, who's a Deputy Scientific Director and a Director of Research in Financial Markets at the Leibniz Institute for Financial Research, as part of SAFE. And I think what we're really interested to hear about today is a project that Loriana is currently working on for the European Commission, which is called ESG Uptake, which is aimed at strengthening the capacity of European state supervisory bodies to monitor and address sustainability risks in the financial sector. And so we're hoping to hear a little bit about that project along the way. So welcome, Loriana.
Thank you.
But before we open it up to listen to our panelists, who are going to be far more interesting than me, I am sure, I just wanted to set the scene a little bit with what we have been doing from our side at the standard setting body to think about implementation and what we have been able to do, we hope, to help those of you out there using our standards. And I think for me, what was really striking when we put out our first two exposure drafts, which led to S1 and S2, was that the single most consistent and common piece of feedback that we got from every stakeholder everywhere in the world was, let's make sure that this is a truly global baseline. Let's make sure that this is a set of standards that can be used not just by the most well-resourced company in a developed economy, but that can really be used by different types of companies, different sizes of companies in a whole range of markets around the world. So let's make sure that these are accessible standards. And we really took that to heart in the redeliberations on S1 and S2. So hopefully you will have seen when you pick up the standards that we've really tried to embed this idea of proportionality in the standards. So in a number of places in the standards, we make the point that companies are not required to do an exhaustive search for information. We say you have to use information which is reasonable and supportable. We want this to be good reporting, but only using the information that's available to you without undue cost or effort. And that's in the standard in several places. Also in several places where there's quantification required, we've actually said qualitative approaches can be okay if you've got more limited resources, capability, or experience. So for example, in scenario analysis. So we really built that into the standards. We also thought really carefully about the pace of the application of our standards. So we said they're ready for use from 2024, but we said, okay, we know that this is a lot. So in the first year, use S1, but you can choose only to report on climate. In the first year, you apply the climate information. You don't have to provide scope 3 information. In the first year that you use our standards, you don't have to line up the timing of your financial statements with the timing of your sustainability information. So we built sort of timing concessions into the standards to really help companies with this massive change management program that we're all undertaking. And when we're talking to jurisdictions about adoption, we're really trying to encourage them to be proportionate as well. Start with the bigger companies, bring the smaller companies in a bit later. Maybe don't start with everything to do with assurance on the first day, build it up over time, because we want people to be encouraged to be aspirational about a lot of companies ending up using the full ISSB global baseline. But we want to be realistic that this is a big change for everybody. So let's be proportionate in what we do. So we really try to set the scene, and I'll be interested to hear if some of this is coming through in application in the market. The other thing that we did, which is really important sitting here in Frankfurt, was the work that we've done with EFRAG and the Commission to really try to make sure that the reporting experience is efficient for companies who need or want to use ESRS and the ISSB standards. So we're really thrilled, nobody more than me, that we've finally managed to publish that interoperability guide with both of our logos on the front. That was a huge prize that we fought very hard to get, which I hope really just helps to navigate. With a navigation table is how I would often describe it. It shows you what we identified as common disclosures on climate between our standards and ESRS, explained how financial materiality was aligned, gave some comments on presentation, and also set out things you need to know about the particular disclosures we ask for that enable you to get to a single disclosure that could be used for two purposes, to meet the ISSB requirements and the ESRS requirements. And so that, again, was just really us trying to do what we can to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of this big reporting experience ahead of us. But that's enough from me. Let's hear what's actually happening out there in the real world. And so we're going to do 2 rounds of questions, and it's up to me to try and keep us to time. What we're going to do is, first of all, to talk about the initial experience in actually implementing these standards. And I might start with the man in the hot seat here, our very diverse panel here, who is actually implementing these standards. So inside the, up to here probably, in ESRS and the ISSB standards. We're thrilled that we've got good alignment between the European requirements and the ISSB standards. And I think what's really interesting talking to you at DHL is you're not new to this reporting at all. I mean, you were already a company that was very much embracing sustainability in the way you ran your business, but also reporting on it from a voluntary perspective. So you've got the perspective of moving from voluntary reporting to this new mandatory sort of framework. So I guess what's different? What do you notice when you move to that mandatory framework?
So before I answer your question, maybe a few words general on the company, why for us this is important. I think most of you know us. We are the biggest logistic company worldwide, but why E, S, and G are important for us? If I talk about environment, about E, we are owning 300 aircraft which are flying for us, our shipment. So you can easily calculate and see how much CO2 we are producing in negative sense every year. So environment is important for us, extremely important in a daily business. The second topic, we employ 600,000 employees worldwide, and we have to take care of the people. People for us, they are major asset. If someone asks me what is important for you, or environment or social, I will probably not give you a straightforward answer because the people are important for us in the same sense as environment. And governance as well. We are a representative, operate in 220 countries of the world, each country with almost each country with different governance structure, different policies. We need to get this everything under one control. This is why our company decided already a few years ago to implement clearly structure how we make the ESG agenda better. For us, it's not purely reporting. For us, it's controlling, and this is the reason why I have the title which I have. So I am not reporting, ESG reporting man. I am responsible for reporting, steering of the company, and as well commercialization of our measures. So this is more general on the company. Second, you mentioned the journey. We started already years ago. CO2, we report already for decade, report and analyze our CO2 figures, scope 1 and scope 3. So it's nothing new for us. We implement this already years ago. In 2021, the decision was taken to include financials, to include reporting of ESG and controlling exclusively in the finance area in my department. So this was where the journey started for us, where we started to consolidate all the activities in one hand. And today, to be honest, this was one of the key decisions which helped us in the current situation almost to survive the work which we have. You ask what changed? I think the major changes is in a positive sense. Finally, we have at least getting less and less different regulations. Of course, the European is the major one for us. ISSB is important one, which we hope will get more and more importance in the future. 220 countries of the world, we cannot manage purely with the European legislation. We need one global legislation which will help us in the future to manage the ESG reporting and controlling worldwide. So this is definitely a positive trend. On the negative side, of course, a lot of work, a lot of effort is, I think, not only for us, for all other companies as well. But I think only to give you a few examples, our KPIs, which we use up to now, the key steering KPIs, we had up to now around 40. With the new European legislation, this will increase to 80 in the next, in this year and in the next years, this year to 62 and then the next year to 80. So it's double as much as we have today. And then, of course, the discussion was this morning as well, the nice topic of double materiality. We did this last year, cost us 6 months, make some consulting company rich. But so it's only to make clear, it's an effort in terms of time, effort in terms of financial effort. I think it's something which we definitely can only recommend that the company take this serious. It's a real heavy exercise, which could help as well to reduce your later reporting effort, because at the end of the day, this if you define something as material, you have to report, there is no way back. And of course, what is important for us, I mentioned ISSB, what we did last year the first time, and we will continue to improve this. We publish a reference table where we combine the European KPIs, the European list of KPIs, and translate this to ISSB. You can see this in our state book. So this is the first step. But I think we will continue to do this in order to get some clear comparability for all countries of the world.
Thank you very much. So a big exercise even for somebody who'd done a lot before. So, yeah. And as I mentioned, you are a member of our transition implementation group. And so I'm hoping that gives you the benefit of others coming and chatting to you about the implementation of the ISSB standards. Do you think companies are thinking about similar things when it comes to implementation?
I think the major outcome of the exchange with the colleagues is that everybody is happy, what I mentioned, happy that we are working on the same standards worldwide, standards which we could use, standards which other country outside Europe could use. And I think this is the biggest benefit. The second question is, of course, which is interesting, maybe not from ISSB side, probably as well. Of course, non-European companies at some stage will have to report as well the euro according to European law. So this is something where I had a lot of exchange because some colleagues asked me already about our experience with this topic. And I think this is something where the benefits is greater than what we have only the discussion about the ISSB issues. But I think in general, the clear opinion is of all the companies, and the nice is because so many different countries, so many different companies are representative in that TIC, that the clear agreement is good that you establish this committee, because help us to exchange, help us as well to get contacts with you team. And at the end, maybe there will be as well some intellectual outcome of that. And I'm sure this will increase more and more than people start to use the tool.
Yeah, definitely. It's super helpful for us because knowing what people are thinking about, worrying about, enables us to target where we might act as well with things like educational material. So Nadja, I might come to you next if that's okay. And thank you to PwC because of course you're supporting the transition implementation group as well. So you have a member there, which is great. And one of the things that I have really noticed with the transition implementation group, which makes me very happy because as many of you know, I'm a geek in my heart, having come from being the chair of the interpretations committee for the IASB. And I've noticed how we're starting to get more specific, really technical questions on the application of S1 and S2. So to give you an example, for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of listening to the discussion, one of the questions we got was what the word vulnerable means, because we didn't define it in the standard, and that was what one of the discussions was about. So people are now looking at individual words to make sure that they understand. So I guess, Nadja, from your side, when you're talking to your clients or companies in the market, as they make progress on implementation, what do you see them sort of focusing in on? What's the trend and the types of things people are looking at?
Yeah, thank you, Sue. And Adam, it wasn't us, unfortunately, who got rejected. So,
but you can ask for the next step.
Will do. Okay, so let me start with a slightly different angle. The questions that I get most are, number one, by far, is what are the others doing? And that really relates also to the materiality analysis, double materiality analysis, financial, and does it really talk to each other? Then, needless to say, we talked about it, data, the interpretation of the materiality analysis, and anything that has to do with estimates, because as we move from voluntary to mandatory, the enforcement regimes start kicking in. And that puts a lot of insecurity into the system around, am I still okay with doing a proper estimate, which we've learned so hard in the IFRS journey, right? So what is a good estimate versus a sloppy estimate, right? When it comes to the interpretation of the standards, it's obviously anywhere where the standard is perceived to be silent. And I say perceived because me as an old US GAAP and IFRS accounting nerd, if you don't have the answer, you go to other places and you find the principles behind it, and then you derive your answer. But there's still quite a bit of insecurity in the system around this type of interpretation, because I think, and you will see that in the next week when we come out with a big global CSRD survey, that most of the projects are being run by the CSO function. They're bringing in the CFO function, the reporting function, more and more, particularly the big companies. But the CSOs aren't that familiar with interpreting proper accounting and disclosure standards. So question number one in that context is, how do we deal with acquisitions and dispositions, disposals? And we have the technical interpretation group, which picks up this topic, I think, next week in the June meeting already. This week, see, this week in the June meeting. So how do you apply the principles in the comparative period guidance to then deal with the acquisition of subsidiaries and then the disposition of subsidiaries as well? And as I was reading that, my brain was going to the really funky areas like, and how do you do that with intensity measures, and you have discontinued operations, but that's a whole different level. So that is one area where we get a lot of questions. And then all the sustainability reporting standards refer to the greenhouse gas protocol, and there's friction, there's tension. Yeah, the greenhouse gas protocol has not only a financial control concept, but an operational control concept. How do you dissolve the conflicts in that area? And then, for example, how do you deal with leases that you bring on balance sheet under the accounting measures? But is that really operational control? How does that really work, right? So that's really the detailed questions, but it's so detailed that I fully agree with you. It's really almost enjoyable to see how deeply into the subject matter people are getting. Yeah. We much discussed interoperability today already. And the second most frequent question that I get, because I have a global responsibility as well, is, can you please finally send me illustrative reports on how to report under ISSB, under ISSB and ESRS, and under ISSB and GRI, and possibly also ESRS, and how does it really look like? How do we make that work, right? And I know that in Singapore, the Accounting Institute, together with us, they're coming up with something shortly. Not sure whether you will like this, whether EFRAG will like this, let's see, yeah, but there's a big need to actually finally get something out in the open and see how it really looks like. I'll leave it at that, and maybe we can dig a little bit deeper into that later on.
Yeah, I've heard that there's a couple of the firms who are soon going to publish their sort of illustrative sustainability disclosures. I'm quite looking forward to seeing what they contain, actually, to see what's there. But I think that will be an interesting piece of work. And it is super interesting to me to see the number of really traditional financial reporting type aspects that are coming up. As we move this connection between sustainability reporting and financial reporting. So, for example, I was in Singapore last week and I saw a gap analysis for TCFD to ISSB. And the first difference that was identified, which I'd never thought about before, was that for TCFD, they hadn't captured the same scope of consolidated accounting as what we would require. So the first gap analysis was truing up so that it was the same group that it applied to. So it's, again, one of these financial reporting meets sustainability reporting moments, which I think is great, you think is great, but I'm not sure the entire market is going to be so excited as you and me are. Now, Gülşah, I'm going to move to you now. So you're in a very special position because you're getting your market ready for this reporting, which is a very interesting perspective. And I guess that you're hearing a lot from your companies about what they are worrying about as they get ready to apply the standards. And so I'd be interested to see what they're saying to you and any plans they have to use some of the reliefs that we had included in the standards. Do you think they are going to be useful? Are you going to use those reliefs?
Thank you for this kind invitation, first of all, and I wish a fruitful session for all of us. If you don't mind, I will use my speech notes not to miss any word, because we have lots of works to do and I don't want to miss any of our works. As Türkiye, we wanted to get into the game quickly regarding sustainability reporting, not only to provide transparent and reliable information to investors, but also to contribute to our businesses continue to create value by maintaining their competitiveness. Therefore, as much as meeting the information needs of investors, the expectations and problems of our businesses, which are the main address of our regulation, are equally important. However, regardless of your purpose, it's inevitable that there will be more or less a reaction against all new regulations, which must be complied with. For this reason, the key point in the success of the regulation is to identify common areas where the intersection of the expectations of investors and enterprises. Otherwise, the regulation will not go beyond seen as a new set of rules and must be complied with. And in this case, the success rate of the regulation will decrease considerably. For this reason, the first step is taken to determine the issues that businesses expect and are concerned about. In order to achieve this, we have established open communication channels and increased our accessibility, organized many meetings with businesses operating in different sectors. Last was the financial institutions, for example, and conveyed to our businesses that conveying their reservations to us played an important role in establishing a solid foundation in the reporting process. Thanks to those open communication channels, we have enabled businesses to share with us the issues that will be challenging for them without any reservations. Although the challenges in sustainability reporting vary for different sectors, I can summarize the 4 main issues that are most frequently communicated to us and that we identified as a result of our prioritization study as follows. The first one is how to comply with EU sustainability reporting requirements because of our intensive commercial relations with EU. The second is the presenting the reporting on the same date as the financial statements would be a challenge for businesses. And the next one is the difficulty of obtaining data for Scope 3 emissions in all sectors, particularly financial institutions. And the last one, but not least, the need for human resources working on sustainability reporting. Starting from the first point, we have been closely following EU regulations from the beginning regarding compliance with EU regulations on sustainability reporting. But I can say that the interoperability works between ISSB and EFRAG have relieved us to a great extent. And the difficulties regarding reporting to be made on the same date as the financial statements and the disclosures regarding Scope 3 emissions have already been foreseen by ISSB, and the transition exemption has been provided for this. However, when we analyzed the current data acquisition and reporting capacity of businesses in Türkiye, we decided that the facilitating implementation provision regarding Scope 3 emissions that the standard provides for the financial institutions should be taken one step further, and we granted an extra exemption for the reporting of Scope 3 emissions for our businesses, all the businesses in all sectors for the first 2 reporting years. This is a relief for Türkiye. During these 2 years, we will continue our work with other public institutions on collecting data and on the emissions of businesses and ensuring access to these data by those concerned. Finally, in order to meet the human resource needs for reporting, we have started working to train reporting experts who are competent to analyze the connection between technical and financial aspects related to sustainability. As I just mentioned earlier, we have made a rapid introduction to sustainability reporting, and the only way to obtain effective results in such a short time is through multidimensional thinking and systematic work. For this purpose, we have created a capacity development program built on 4 pillars. which serves the purpose of creating a quality and robust infrastructure for corporate sustainability reporting and sustainability-related financial disclosures. The first pillar of the program consists of awareness and cooperation efforts to reach companies together with stakeholder public institutions and to draw attention to the importance and process of reporting. I can say that all the governmental institutions related to sustainability is working with us. We are in the main of a circle. We are in the middle of a circle and we are working with all the public institutions and non-governmental organizations and all the private sector organizations. The second pillar includes our efforts to share a wide range of diverse and fit-for-purpose training materials on financial material-based reporting and to accredit the institutions that will provide training. We issued some rules on official gazette about accrediting the training companies because we need to regulate this area. The third pillar is the green collar competency study to eliminate the existing expert gap in sustainability reporting in Türkiye as in the rest of the world, and to ensure the formation of green collar capacity capable of enabling businesses to conduct their own corporate sustainability reporting. As you said, you won't need any more firms to give money in Türkiye, I hope. The last pillar includes the establishment of assurance engagement and oversight system that will ensure quality monitoring of every stage of assurance engagements. In this capacity building program, we have detailed our main and intermediate objectives for each of the pillars I've mentioned and the steps to be taken to achieve them. And we have been actively working on these pillars since last year. As a result, I happily say that we are receiving very positive feedback from our businesses and public stakeholders thereof.
Thank you. It's really impressive what you're doing. And I think one of the things that we really see, and I hope we continue to see, is that where jurisdictions are making their decisions and working out what to do, they're engaging with other jurisdictions to learn. So I think you guys will be very well placed to explain what you did and what you learned to guide others. So thank you for your leadership there. It's really great to see. Now, Loriana, you've probably got a slightly different perspective, most sort of macro perspective, I think, of us here, and also the perspective of looking at the information that's sort of coming into the system, if you like, through this project where you've got visibility on the information that those overseeing listed companies, banks and insurers are using to monitor risks. So what are you observing in terms of the initial experience from the requirements being applied to provide sustainability related information? I'm a bit scared to hear what you've got to say, actually.
Yeah, so thank you very much. At SAFE, we are doing a lot of research on sustainability, but the decision for us to participate to this project is called ESG Uptake with also University of Vienna, University of Venice. It was pretty much a challenge because, also in all the debate that we have today, we talk about, accounting standard or, the standard for sustainability, but clearly all this type of, let's say, demand for information comes from regulation. So, that is already in place or it will be in place in the future. Financial reporting has to be done now together with this sustainability information. But from the point of view of the regulators, there is also the supervisor that needs to go and check if indeed, firms are reporting in the right way based on the legislation. In this case, I'm talking about the European legislation. So, I'm not familiar with all the other issues that will maybe happens in other continents, but clearly, what we are doing at SAFE is really to try to help 11 national competent authorities to try to, let's say, implement their role as regulator and supervisor in the different countries. And one thing that I can already anticipate to you is that all the challenge that clearly the firms are facing companies are facing in, understanding what are the data, how to report the data, are also from the point of view of the supervisor. Because, the supervisor has the mandate now to monitor all these huge amount of data, hopefully provided in a standardized way, but maybe not, with a different interpretation of the new legislation that we have in Europe, that clearly the different national authorities in the different countries in Europe are also absorbing in different way. And the regulators and the supervisor at the different national authorities in Europe maybe are giving a different interpretation of this legislation. So this is why the European Commission asked to us as a group of academics to try to provide standards to the regulators and the supervisor in a way that, as much as possible in Europe, they are requiring the same type of, let's say, disclosure, and they will use also this data from the macroprudential point of view in the same way. Because, you know, the main objective of the project is indeed to try to strengthen the capacity of these national competent authorities in implementing the sustainable finance regulatory framework, address mostly from the point of view of ESG risk, so not from the preferences of the investor, but mostly from the point of view of risk, as in the section, you know, from the Basel Committee, this was the main, let's say, perspective, in order that, you know, they will use the most appropriate methodology analytical tool. The focus of this project is largely on banking, capital markets, and insurances. So we are really supporting the supervisors in monitoring the way in which banks, capital market, and insurances are implementing the vast legislation that in the, let's say, last 5 years has been implemented in Europe. And I can tell you, well, I'm sure that all of you knows, is quite complicated. And try to figure out from that perspective, what are the basic data that all this regulation is asking is not an easy task. So, you know, I'm very happy that, you know, you are starting from the perspective, okay, let's find solutions. But also from the point of view of the regulators, you know, it's very difficult to figure out what certain type of requirements that are coming out from this very complex legislation are coming out. And so, you know, the reason is that clearly we know already there is poor disclosure also from the portfolio of the banks or from the capital markets. There is limited investor and financial institution prepared, and I think that all of you now are doing a great job. And what the supervisor are already facing is inconsistent reporting. And clearly, you know, when you are facing this type of problem, okay, they need to figure out what is the issue, why do you have this inconsistency, and then eventually, you know, intervene and try to create some problem, provide some solution. But it is 8 months that we are working on this project, is very challenging. And the two main, let's say, insight that I get from the point of view of this big issue that is how to implement the new regulation in Europe is that this type of supervisor, you know, till 1 year ago, they were maybe supervising how banks are reporting capital requirements. So now they have been taken out and they need to be expert on this very complex, let's say, topic. And one thing that we did first, it was really simple, you know, some courses, because, for example, we spent time to try to convince them that there is a significant difference between ESG ratings and ESG risk. I can imagine that, you know, you have the same challenge also in the companies, but, you know, also the supervisor has the same problem, you know. And okay, this is just the basic thing, because then we need to train them to do, to collect data in order to do climate stress tests and all these other type of things that from the macro perspective are extremely important. On the other side, they have also all the problem of finding out from all the institutions that they are supervising, data accessibility, reliability of the reported data, because in some case you have the data, but you don't know if they are reliable. And third, you know, clearly having standardization. So clearly, I think that, you know, ISSB and all these institutions are doing a great job. What I can tell you is that on top, they will solve only one part of all the regulation that we have now in Europe is requiring in terms of data.
Thank you. It's really interesting. So a good, case there for the benefits of a global baseline for consistency of data and information. And also, I think, capacity building. I think capacity building is needed all over the place, including and with the regulators, because it's a big change in what we're all being asked to think about. So that's important. But you also gave me a great hook for what I want to move on to next. You talked about, data accessibility and the reliability of the information that's coming into the system that we're now going to be used to make better decisions, looking at our banner over there. So we need better information for better decisions. And one of the really important parts of what we're all relying on here, which is not within our control, but certainly of high interest to us at the ISSB, is the assurance that comes with the requirements to make sure that we really can rely on the information for better decisions. And so Nadja, you must be all over this, given that you work for one of the audit firms. And we all know assurance of this information is going to be really critical to make sure we actually do get to where we want, which was with reliable, comparable information that is investable for investors. And we see increasing standardization and assurance practices around the world. How do you see the profession evolving from providing assurance on voluntary information to providing assurance on mandatory information with regulators all over the place?
Yeah, the way the profession evolves starts with how the preparers evolve. Again, so I have to start there, because before you could, involuntary information environment, the assurance provider could have a debate with the preparer on, well, where do the data come from? How does it hang together? How comfortable do you feel? And then maybe I shy away from that KPI and only comment on that KPI. With limited assurance, hardly any reasonable assurance that was in the market at all. And now we're moving to assurance over whole statements that will then require a whole different governance at the preparers. So the boards need to upskill significantly. We need a good system of internal controls. And we all know that Excel is not the answer, right? So we need technology to help us with that. And there won't be an ERP for ESG. We need different technology systems to come together and then talk to each other, data solutions that then are, again, well controlled and governed. And all of that is the big challenge for the preparers. I'm just looking at some of them, they're violently nodding. Then the auditor comes in and works with the company upfront before the assurance, actually, to make sure that the preparer is on a good track to get there. And at year end, there aren't any big surprises left, right? So that's the preparer side. One more comment on the global status of things. The embedding of sustainability information into the governance systems is something that is vastly different around the globe. From a German perspective, we are very lucky in that, as well as the responsibility of the board, it's already embedded in the German Corporate Governance Codex. And there's already mention of the internal controls over sustainability reporting, right? So that's quite advanced. If we go to other countries, it's nowhere. So that requires a lot of education as well of the boards and the preparers as well, with what is needed to get to a place where a full report, including all the narrative, as well as the KPIs, can be assured. Right? Back to the comment on capacity building. Now, the question that you actually ask, the profession. Well, let me start with PwC. It is quite a transformation process, right? So we're undergoing some of the same pain that preparers are undergoing. The way we look at CSRD, and that's where we have most data and benchmarks, apologies for that. But the way we look at it is, as auditors, we will, as financial auditors, we will probably cover 60% of the information that sits in a sustainability report. 25%, we need sustainability reporting experts. So people who really are the ninjas of the basis of interpretation, AG 273 of standard XYZ. So the really ninjas who know what we're talking about. And then for the remaining 50%, we need the deep sustainability people who know what a water discharge area in a certain places and how you look at all these different measures and whether what the company is really saying makes sense in the grand scheme of things. So, and that we need for all of Europe, our share of the 50,000 companies that will be reporting. We can't have that in every country, so we need different territory collaboration models. So it is quite a bit of a transformation program as well. Luckily, we will see hopefully already at the end of this year, a draft sustainability reporting auditing standard, auditing and assurance standards, ISSA, I never get the acronyms right, too many of them, ISA 5000 and U. That will then also help prepare that global baseline of how we look at assurance, because there we also have the same problem as we have in reporting. What does it actually mean to be assured? What is the standard? Are we running into the next expectation gap that people by just the mere fact of an assurance report accompanying a statement, an inference is made that the company acts sustainably? No, it doesn't, right? But there's also this educational element of it that we still need to do in the market. We'll have still to see how the CSRD transposition actually works in the various European countries. Some countries already have imposed certain rules and regulations. For example, France requires financial auditors to have at least 90 hours of additional training to be able to sign the sustainability assurance report. Now that sounds like a lot and then not a lot, because they also understand that you need to pull together the different experts, much as we do today in fair value and business combinations, accounting. So last but not least, we need to train our people on making it efficient for you, right? So what we don't want is processes where the financial auditor comes, talks to people, and then the sustainability auditor comes and talks to people, and it all becomes even more of a burden to companies. We want an efficient system that actually smoothly helps companies as they prepare financial and sustainability information together for reporting on the same date. We have that same efficiency and process going on for the auditing as well. So lots of things to do, but I think we're all well underway. The accounting firms, the auditing firms are talking to each other as is permitted under the respective laws, of course, but on a technical perspective. So because we only don't want to see any type of opinion shopping or noise in the market that we all interpret things differently, that will not lead to efficient and transparent information at the right time.
May I make one comment? We are as well looking for experts. So we are probably fighting for the same people.
And me too.
So, So I think as a student today, I will definitely study sustainability. This is the future.
I agree with that. Yes.
Makes the auditing profession look very attractive, I would say, for students.
Also, the supervisor needs some of this human capital.
Okay, we'll go into a bidding war here. So you are getting ready for mandatory assurance from 2025. And I think you mentioned that one of your pillars of your capacity building was assurance engagement. So what else are you doing to get your market ready for the reality of assurance? You know, not only are you going to have to report, you're going to be subject to assurance.
Yeah. Market has to be ready. We are again fast in this area, and good news, we are teaching experts you can import from Turkey.
We are. No, we are. Seriously, highly qualified people in Turkey that I think so many countries would be so glad to have. So we are actually importing your talent.
We are filling the gap, okay? Yes. Also, in addition to being a standard setting body, Public Oversight Authority is the sole competent authority in Turkey in the field of auditing. For more than 10 years, KGK, our authority, has been maintaining an effective public oversight structure where it has been overseeing the authorization of auditors and audit firms, that will undertake the audit of financial statements, and every process from the contract stage to the reporting stage, we oversight their work. Therefore, we can say that we have significant knowledge and experience in the field of auditing. Since the first time we started to regulate sustainability reporting, our goal was to create the same environment of trust in sustainability reporting as we have created for financial statements. For this reason, we have made assurance engagements mandatory in sustainability reporting since the first mandatory reporting period, because the reliability and global validity of the reporting depends on whether it has been audited as much as the reporting framework. Therefore, we started our work by utilizing our experience in the field of auditing in order to allocate the same reliable audit structure we have established for financial statements in sustainability reporting. The first issue in the assurance engagement structure we plan to establish is to identify the auditors who can undertake assurance engagements of sustainability reports like France. Although it seems reasonable for independent auditors to undertake assurance engagements, considering the connection of sustainability reports with financial statements, we have come to the conclusion that auditors should have a certain level of competence and proficiency in the specific issues related to sustainability. For this reason, we have decided to conduct a separate authorization exam for sustainability report auditors, and to impose an obligation for the authorized auditors to complete a certain number of hours of training annually. These authorizations will be made among our existing independent auditors who will be successful in the sustainability exam, and PwC staff are waiting excitedly in Türkiye, this exam. And we plan to hold the first authorization exam in August this year. These rules are fully aligned with EU regulations and are already in line with the principle of reciprocity between the EU and Turkey in regarding to auditing. However, the framework to be taken as a basis for the assurance to be given in the engagements to be conducted is also of great importance. For this, I can say that the ISSB's efforts to establish a global assurance engagement standard focused on sustainability, simultaneously with the regulations on sustainability reporting, is an exciting development for Turkey, and we look forward to incorporating ISSA 5000 into our legislation. Like IFRS Foundation, we have an agreement with IFEC, and we make their standards Turkish regulation as well. Although 5000 envisaged that reasonable assurance can be provided in assurance engagements of sustainability reports, we believe that it would be healthier for our progress to accept limited assurance as sufficient for the first few years and then move to reasonable assurance. As I know, EU is doing the same thing. In 2028, they will planning to shift to the reasonable assurance. Another issue we are working on regarding assurance engagements is to establish an effective public oversight system. In fact, we already have a system where we carry out oversight activities from the contract stage to report stage in independent audit. So I can say that our job here is a little easier. We will determine the requirements for the oversight of sustainability assurance engagements and integrate them into our existing system. After the assurance reports are published, we will prepare our plans for the inspections to be carried out by the authorities' experts and ensure that the system runs smoothly and without disruption. My second answer will be short here. Thank you.
Okay, you guys are super organized. You've done a lot. So Adam, coming back now to the real world of being, on the hook to get these reports out. What are you doing to get ready for the verification aspects of the reporting, and how does it relate to the audit of the financial statements?
I think the ultimate goal must be that the non-financial data are the same quality as the financial data. This is, I think, definitely what we are making the entire organization aware of. Not only in the center, as well in the countries, they need to fight, a real fight to get the quality. Are we there? I would say probably 70–75% is still a long way to go. The 75 maybe the easiest one. The last 25 will be much more difficult. What we have today, of the 40 KPIs which we are using, 29 are audited with reasonable assurance, which is a quite good result. The entire sustainability section in our annual report is audited with limited assurance at this stage. So what we will have to do, we will have to go in the next years and improve the KPIs in line with the implementation. We will not get all the additional KPIs in 1 year audited at higher level, but definitely step by step, we would like to do this. What will help us, we have quite a robust internal control system developed over the last 5-6 years. Not only the financial ICS, but as well the non-financial areas like operations, like HR, like compliance. This helped a lot because a lot of the new processes and the new KPIs which generate new processes already included in the ICS which we audit, which we use in the past. So we have only to see where are the differences. We have to see how combine this, how we report this, and of course to put higher focus on the non-financial areas. The ICS in finance, I would say, is real good shape. In areas like IT, like HR, operations, we need to a little bit push the colleagues that they understand how important this is. And this is soft statement with push. And I think this is something which we believe allowed us in the next 2-3 years to get reasonable assurance for the entire KPIs which we will implement, and at some stage will be mandatory. And I think, again, what I said to the double materiality, I have to say to the audit level, to the assurance, company should not underestimate the effort. I think this is huge effort because the quality of data in the non-financial areas is not always as good as we hope and we believed. If you look this as a finance person in more details, you see how much work need to be done to get robust and proper processes and systems.
And do you have the same auditor working on the financial audit, statement audit, as for your assurance for your sustainability reporting?
Yeah, we decided this year that we will use the same auditor for both, which make, I think, life easier for the auditor and for us. But where discussions are going at the moment is of course as question as well of scoping. Some countries which are important in the or which are not important for the financial audit are maybe important for the non-financial audit. How do you manage this is increasing the scope, and I think you talk about efficiency. Yes, we not want to have a monster of auditors running around the world. We would like, no, not like that. You are not anymore our auditor. So, but it's, we need, and this is important, we need to have a slim process still to manage this. So I think the last sentence, we strongly believe without support from the digitalization side, this number of data will be not manageable. We need to have a data lake, we need to have digital processes. It's much more complex than the financial area.
Interesting. And Loriana, you were talking about some of the challenges that you're sort of identifying through this project that you're looking at. So to what extent do you think the sort of assurance layer might help with some of these challenges?
Well, I think that clearly, you know, since data has to be reliable, having someone that is really auditing the data that reported is for sure very good for the supervisor. On one side for you know, credibility, but on the other side, again, I think something that we need in Europe is comparability. So comparability from one company to the other, because if there is, in order to audit, you need to have some standard again. And this is something that I'm continuing to repeat. We need to have data that can be comparable. If we want also to do some analysis at the macro level, we need to put we need to have data that can be really combined. Otherwise, you know, if you have data that are produced in a completely different way, you cannot put them together. Starting already from scope 1, you know, CO2 emission, we need to be sure that, first of all, these data are reliable, are calculated in a standardized way, and can be comparable, you know. All the other ways through which we are going to measure this scope 1 with, I don't know, some certificates and so on, in Europe, we have a mess. You know, I'm always making this simple example. If you look to a car, a Fiat 500 and another car, you know, and you look to the EPC of this car in France and in Germany, one is rated A, and in the other country is rated F, and in Austria is rated C. And all of them are right. That's the problem, you know. All of them are right because they use a different way, but you know, we cannot have that based on the situation and some political or lobby, allow me to say this, lobby pressure for something that can be very tangible. We have completely different measure. And then, you know, we are implementing the same regulation coming from the European regulation. And, you know, you have this completely different way to look to something that is simple. We are simply talking now about a car that is well defined and its CO2 emission. That should be quite standard, the way in which we are going to measure. So I can imagine if we're not able to do this for one simple car, can you imagine all the issues? So the effort has to be really strong. And this is what we are also, you know, trying to support the supervisor to be very strong on asking, you know, data that are comparable and potentially also reported in the same repository with a standard way. So because, you know, going to investigate this data is very challenging. So they have to be reported in a standardized way in a unique potentially database and make available to all our researchers. It would be even better.
Yeah, well, at least hopefully between ESRS and the ISSB standards, those pieces of information are getting closer together, which is a good start. Now we've got a couple of minutes where we could have a question or two from the audience if there was any burning questions from people here who've got so many different interesting perspectives. No, in which case, just give a moment in case anybody wants to ask a question. No? Okay, in which case I'm going to turn it back to you guys and perhaps ask what your sort of main piece of advice would be for the audience as they are all interested in disclosure of sustainability related information, I'm guessing, given they're here today. So given your various different perspectives, you know, if there was one thing you wanted them to go away to think about today, what would you leave them with?
I believe that everyone should be quick about this topic because time is flying and our world is getting worse. And businesses, whether or not making reporting, they should be honest. They move frankly and they have to show us their opportunities and also risks because we will see their financial statements, non-financial information, even today or tomorrow. So I always suggest our companies to be honest about their non-financial information, and I can advise the audience too.
Yep, transparency. Good message from a somebody in the regulatory community. Nadja.
So number one, I think everybody wants to do a really good job. I've not spoken to anyone in the whole ecosystem who says, well, it's all crap, I'm just going to pass by and try to pass by. But it will take a little bit of time, particularly companies that haven't done TCFD reporting, again, if I really look at it from a global perspective, right, they will struggle with scope 1, 2, and 3, with scenario analysis, with the vulnerability analysis and all of this. So it will take a little bit of time, and we need to be a bit patient for the system to build out, to get the full transparency and the full comparability globally, as the top 1% of companies like DHL who are really on top of it, we might not see everywhere. And all of that will take a lot of collaboration between the ecosystem participants. One more sentence. I've spoken to one person who said, I will use sustainability to fix the culture in my company. And what she meant is, it requires a lot more collaboration between departments and people who have not collaborated on things before, but actually forcing that makes the company a better company. So there are side effects that we should really cherish and bring to the forefront of the transformation that we need.
So 3 topics from my side. I think the first one, awareness. You need to, everybody in the company need to be aware that this is important topic. It's not head office issue. It's not the issue of finance department. This need to be real, communicate to the important stakeholder, but as well within the organization, especially if you have this complex organization as we have worldwide. Second topic, less is more. If we will go and implement everything which is necessary at some stage, this will collapse. So I think we should, as the one who are involved in the implementation, we need to make decision what is important, which process needs to be established. I am not saying we should not comply. We should comply, but you can comply in different ways. You can comply as well the way that you reduce the bureaucracy as much as possible. And last topic, start as early as possible to use the data, which is good quality of data for steering of the company. At the end of the day, the purpose of us is not to provide great reports. The purpose of our company is to make good money and in a sustainable way.
Yeah, so from my point of view, clearly my wish is that we will have a European sustainability regulation to be more uniformly implemented in Europe. And I hope that, you know, all of you will really put an effort so that there will be not the usual, let's say, distinction from one country to the other, but really try to have a standard for something that, you know, will make our world, if you remember what we said before, better. So it will be very effective, this type of regulation.
Thank you very much. And given I've got the last word, I'll indulge myself for a second. So just to add to your observations, I think for me, what I really am keen on companies doing is really looking at this strategically. I think the saddest thing of this whole exercise that we're going through would be if it's approached as a compliance exercise. I think if you look at our standards, we're asking for information which is so important that it could actually influence an investment decision, which should be stuff that really matters to management and to the board to really create value for a business that's going to be around in the long term. So I think thinking about it through that prism is really important. And then the other sort of strategic thing, which I really hope that we can achieve collectively, is creating an environment where people aren't too scared to start. Because if people fear that they're just going to get slapped over the wrist for doing a bad job, it's going to be a very, very difficult environment to start such a new wave of reporting. Whereas if we can all be sort of growing up and say, look, we know it's not going to be perfect on day one. We know we're going to have to get better over time and we're going to improve, but we're in it together to learn. And as long as we say to investors, look, I've done this, I haven't been able to do that yet, I've had to use this estimation, get started and then we get it going. And so I really, really hope that sort of the market can be a bit strategic in the way that we approach all of this as well. But with those philosophical words, I'd like to really thank the panelists. I think it was great to have 4 just such different perspectives and 4 people really deeply engaged in thinking through these issues thoroughly from your different perspectives. So really thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you very much.